You won't believe what I'm about to tell you. I was in the garden shed when my husband's friend came in, and what happened next completely changed how I see myself, my marriage, and even the way I connect with people. Before I tell you, let me just ask, where are you watching from right now? I always love knowing whether you're in a small town, a big city, or somewhere peaceful in between. Share it in the comments because it feels like we're sitting together, talking over coffee. And if my story touches you, even just a little, I'd be grateful if you tap the like button and subscribe. That way, you'll be right here with me for the next chapters too. So, let me take you there, to that quiet afternoon that started like any other. The shed sits at the very back of our yard, tucked behind rows of rose bushes my husband planted years ago. I always loved that spot because it felt hidden, like a secret corner of the world. The air inside smells of wood, soil, and the faint sweetness of dried lavender I hung up last summer. Sometimes when the house feels too loud or too empty, I escape there just to sit on the little stool, run my hands over the old tools, and remember a younger version of myself, the one who dreamed about more than just laundry and bills. That day, I was sorting through a box of garden gloves and tangled twine, humming softly, when I heard the creak of the shed door. I looked up, expecting maybe my husband had forgotten something, but instead, it was Jackson, his longtime friend. Now, Jackson and I go way back. He's been around since before I married my husband, part of the same fishing trips, backyard barbecues, and birthday celebrations. He's always been polite, dependable, and a little reserved, the kind of man who carries an easy smile but doesn't talk just to fill silence. At 57, he carries himself with that quiet confidence men sometimes grow into. Shoulders broad, voice steady, eyes that don't dart around but settle on you like he's really listening. "Didn't mean to scare you," he said, stepping inside. The late afternoon sun slanted through the small window, cutting across his face and catching the faint lines around his eyes. I laughed softly. "You didn't scare me. Just wasn't expecting anyone." He nodded, closing the door behind him. "Your husband asked me to grab the hedge clippers. Said he couldn't remember if they were here or in the garage." I gestured toward the corner. "They're right there under the old tarp." He walked past me, his arm brushing mine lightly in the cramped space. It was nothing deliberate, I told myself, but even so, I felt a flicker inside, a warmth I hadn't felt in a long while. I tried to push it away, focusing on the dust motes dancing in the sunlight, but it lingered, like the way a song sticks in your head. Jackson bent down to pick up the clippers, and when he straightened, he didn't immediately head for the door. Instead, he studied me for a moment, not in a way that made me uncomfortable, but in a way that made me feel seen. "You always keep this place so neat," he said. "Looks more like a little retreat than a shed." I smiled, a bit embarrassed. "It's my escape. Out here, it feels like I can breathe, you know." He nodded slowly. "I get that. Sometimes you need a space just for yourself." The quiet stretched between us, but it wasn't awkward. It was charged somehow, the kind of silence where two people are both thinking something, but neither dares to say it. I felt my pulse quicken, though all I did was fuss with a coil of twine in my hands, pretending I wasn't aware of how close he stood. Then he spoke again, softly. "Funny thing is, I don't think anyone realizes how much you carry. You do so much for everyone. Sometimes I wonder if anyone tells you that." His words landed deeper than I expected. My throat tightened, because the truth was, I couldn't remember the last time anyone, not even my husband, had said something like that. Noticing, appreciating, seeing me. I looked up at him, and for a moment, neither of us moved. The air in the shed felt heavier, thicker, like even the dust particles had stilled to listen. I finally let out a shaky laugh. "Careful, Jackson. You'll make me cry in my own garden shed." He smiled, but it wasn't teasing. It was gentle. "Then maybe it's about time you did. Sometimes tears clear the way for what needs to grow." I swallowed hard, my chest tight. It wasn't about romance. Not yet. Maybe not ever, but it was about connection, about two people standing in a quiet space, realizing there was more between them than just polite conversations at family barbecues. And yet there we were, two grown adults, bound by loyalty and history, standing in a garden shed with the world just outside the door. I don't know how long we stood there, not talking, not moving, just letting the silence wrap around us. But I do know this. Something had shifted. A seed had been planted. And as Jackson finally opened the door, letting the cool air rush in, he glanced back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Respect, yes. Care, yes. And maybe something more. When the door closed behind him, I sat back down on the stool, my heart still racing. I pressed my hands to my lap, staring at the beams of light streaming through the dusty window, and whispered to myself, what just happened? I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that I wasn't the same woman who had entered the shed that afternoon, and deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, the sunlight came softly through the kitchen window, painting the counters in warm gold. I sat at the table with my cup of tea, the steam curling around my fingers, and tried to make sense of the feelings that had lingered in the shed. It wasn't a simple crush. Not that I would call it that. Not exactly. It was something more subtle, a recognition of being truly seen after so many years of routines, responsibilities, and polite smiles. I felt both unsettled and oddly alive, like I was standing on the edge of a quiet revelation. I didn't tell my husband about Jackson's visit. Not yet. Partly because I wanted to understand my own feelings first, and partly because I wasn't sure he would understand the complexity of them. It wasn't about betrayal or desire. It was about connection, about someone acknowledging the invisible parts of me that everyone else took for granted. I sipped my tea, letting the warmth seep in, and replayed the brief moments in the shed over and over in my mind. Later that afternoon, I found myself wandering back to the shed. My fingers trailed along the edge of the old wooden door, tracing the grooves worn smooth by time and use. I opened it slowly, half expecting it to feel different somehow. But it was the same, the familiar scent of wood and earth, the quiet that seemed to exist only here. I stepped inside, and my eyes settled on the tools, the jars of seeds, the coil of twine I had been handling yesterday. It felt comforting, grounding. That's when I heard his voice. I didn't mean to intrude again, Jackson said, stepping in through the doorway. He held the hedge clippers casually in one hand, but it wasn't the tool that caught my attention. It was the calm certainty in his presence. I smiled, though my S. Jacksonock fluttered. You're not intruding. You just have good timing. He leaned against the doorframe, his posture relaxed. I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd check on your roses. You always said they need care. And well, I remembered. I laughed softly. You remembered? That's surprising for you, Jackson. His eyes twinkled with mischief, but it softened quickly into something more earnest. I do pay attention, more than I let on. For a moment, we just stood there, the shed small and quiet around us, the sunlight catching the dust in slow-moving beams. There was an unspoken understanding that neither of us wanted to rush or label the moment. It was just awareness, a recognition of each other's presence, of the value we held beyond our roles in my husband's life, beyond the history we shared. I walked over to the roses, brushing my fingers along the delicate petals. They're doing well, actually. A little sunburned on the edges, but thriving, I said, surprising myself with how easy the words came. Jackson nodded, stepping closer. They're beautiful, he said. Then, almost quietly, he added, just like this space. You've made it feel alive. I felt a warmth creep into my chest, a mix of gratitude and an almost thrilling nervousness. We were two people fully aware of each other, yet careful, respectful, mindful. There was a deep mutual trust in the way we spoke, the way we looked at each other. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't physical. It was a communion of presence, a gentle acknowledgement that sometimes understanding someone completely is rarer than any grand gesture. We talked then about the garden, about memories of fishing trips, about small everyday frustrations and little joys that often went unnoticed. Our conversation flowed naturally, punctuated with quiet laughter and thoughtful pauses. I realized how much I had missed these kinds of talks, the kind that leave your mind and heart both feeling full. After a while, I noticed a small, almost shy smile crossing his face. "I feel like we've never really had the chance to talk like this," he said, just honestly, without interruptions or expectations. I nodded, feeling an echo of the same thought. It's true. I guess life sometimes doesn't leave room for that, but maybe it's never too late. The afternoon waned, shadows stretching long across the shed floor. I felt a calm settle over me, a quiet certainty that whatever this was, it was meaningful. It wasn't about changing my life overnight or tearing down relationships. It was about discovering a side of myself I hadn't given attention to for decades. It was about mutual respect and gentle understanding, about finding connection in unexpected places. Before he left, Jackson paused at the doorway. "I should get going. Your husband will be wondering where I am." I smiled, feeling a pang of reluctant farewell. "Thank you for coming, for noticing." He nodded almost solemnly and then added, "And thank you for letting me in, not just the shed." As the door closed behind him, I sat down on the stool again, my heart lighter, my mind buzzing with thoughts I hadn't anticipated. I realized that some encounters don't need to be dramatic to leave a lasting mark. Sometimes the quiet moments, the ones full of presence, honesty, and care, can shift you in ways you never expected. I lingered there for a while longer, feeling the gentle embrace of sunlight and shadow, thinking about how life could surprise you when you least expect it. And deep down, I knew that this was only the beginning of something quietly transformative, a journey into understanding, awareness, and connection. The next few days settled into a rhythm that was both familiar and subtly changed. I went about my usual routines, watering the garden, tidying the house, preparing meals, but there was an undercurrent of anticipation, a quiet awareness that something had shifted within me. I found myself thinking about Jackson more than I expected, not in a frivolous or flirtatious way, but with a sense of appreciation and curiosity. He had stirred something long dormant, a part of me that craved connection, acknowledgement, and a gentle companionship beyond the expected roles of wife, mother, and caretaker. One late afternoon, the phone rang. It was him. "Hey," he said, his voice warm and steady, like sunlight on a cool day. "I was thinking of checking the shed again. The roses could use some attention before the weekend heat. Would it be all right if I stopped by?" I hesitated for a moment, feeling a flutter of excitement and nervousness. "Of course," I said finally. "I'll be here." When he arrived, the garden shimmered with the golden glow of the sun, and the air was fragrant with the scent of earth and blooming flowers. He carried a small bag of gardening supplies, but as soon as he stepped inside the shed, it wasn't the tools that captured my attention. It was the quiet confidence he radiated, the way he seemed entirely present in the moment. We worked side by side, pruning, untangling vines, and shifting soil in companionable silence. There was a rhythm to our movements, an unspoken understanding that allowed us to exist together without forcing conversation, yet feeling fully engaged. At one point, I brushed my hand against his as we reached for the same tool. The touch was brief, but it sent a small ripple of awareness through me. "You know," he said softly, not looking at me, "I've always admired how you care for things, for people. Quietly, without expecting recognition." I felt my chest tighten, a mix of humility and something deeper. "I suppose I never really thought about it that way," I said. "It's just life, isn't it? You do what you can." He straightened, leaning on the edge of the workbench, eyes thoughtful. "Yes, but sometimes what we do goes unnoticed, and it shouldn't." I hope you know that someone sees you, truly sees you. I swallowed, a lump forming in my throat. The sincerity in his words touched a place I had long ignored, the yearning for acknowledgement and respect. Thank you, Jackson, I whispered. That means more than I can say. We fell silent again, but it was different this time. There was a closeness that had grown from our previous encounters, a mutual respect that didn't rush or demand but simply existed. I felt safe, understood, and for the first time in years, fully present in my own skin. As the sun began to dip lower, casting long shadows across the shed floor, he leaned against the doorway, watching me straighten up from tending the roses. You've created something beautiful here, he said, his voice low and sincere. Not just the garden, but this space, and even the way you carry yourself. I felt warmth spread through me, a deep appreciation and an emotional vulnerability I hadn't felt in a long time. It's comforting to hear that. I've spent so long doing for others, I sometimes forget what it feels like to be noticed. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the faint heat from his body, but still respectful, still careful. Then, let this be a reminder, he said softly, that it's okay to be seen, to be valued. I nodded, my eyes misting slightly. The emotional weight of the moment pressed gently yet powerfully against my heart. It wasn't about desire or fleeting attraction. It was about connection, recognition, and the quiet courage to allow oneself to be fully acknowledged. For a long time, we stayed there side by side, tending to the roses and talking about small, ordinary things that felt extraordinary in the shared silence and mutual presence. There was laughter, of course, but also a reflective stillness that settled comfortably around us. I realized that I had been craving this kind of exchange, this deep, unhurried attention for years, and it felt miraculous to find it in someone I had known so long, yet never truly understood. As the day waned, Jackson finally packed up his tools. I should get going, he said, a hint of reluctance in his tone. Your husband will be back soon, and I don't want to overstay. I smiled, feeling a bittersweet twinge. Thank you for everything today, for noticing, for being here. He returned my smile, warm and steady. And thank you for letting me in, not just the shed, but everything that goes with it. When he left, the garden felt quieter, but not empty. It felt full of possibility, of subtle transformation, of a newfound understanding that connection doesn't always need to be dramatic or overt. It can be gentle, steady, and profoundly meaningful. I sat on the edge of the workbench, feeling the fading sunlight warm my back, and reflected on the past days. There was a sense of awakening, of personal discovery, that filled me with both humility and quiet joy. I realized that life could still surprise me, even at 53, and that the kind of connection I longed for wasn't lost. It had simply been waiting for the right moment, with the right person, to emerge naturally. And deep down, I knew this wasn't just about the garden, the shed, or even Jackson. It was about me finally allowing myself to be seen, acknowledged, and appreciated in a way that I had long denied, and that I understood was a lesson I would carry with me far beyond the confines of the shed, far beyond any fleeting moments of surprise or curiosity. It was about respect, empathy, and the enduring beauty of human connection. The weeks that followed were gentle, quiet, yet filled with a subtle energy I hadn't felt in years. Life continued its usual rhythm: family obligations, neighborhood routines, and the little domestic tasks that often feel like the bulk of existence. But now, each day carried an undercurrent of awareness, a soft pulse that reminded me of the shed, the roses, and the unexpected presence of Jackson. It wasn't about secrecy or forbidden feelings. It was about mindfulness, acknowledgement, and the kind of connection that doesn't demand grand gestures to leave a lasting mark. One late afternoon, I found myself wandering to the shed again, partly out of habit, partly because I realized how much that small space had become a sanctuary for my thoughts and emotions. The air was warm, tinged with the earthy scent of soil and the faint fragrance of the roses we had tended together. I opened the door, letting the sunlight spill inside, and for a moment I just stood there, absorbing the quiet intimacy of the space. Then he arrived, Jackson. His presence felt familiar, yet subtly new, as if our shared moments had quietly altered the way we occupied space together. He carried a small basket of fresh flowers he had picked from his own garden, smiling as he stepped inside. "I thought these might brighten your shed," he said softly. I took the basket, feeling the weight of the gesture, the thoughtfulness behind it. "They're beautiful. Thank you." We moved through the shed with ease, arranging the flowers and tending to the roses. Conversation came naturally, flowing between memories, observations, and the simple joys of everyday life. There was laughter, of course, but also long, reflective pauses where neither of us needed to speak. The silence was comfortable, woven with understanding and mutual respect. At one point, I noticed how his eyes lingered, not in longing, but in recognition. It was a gaze that seemed to say, "I see you, I appreciate you, I respect you." And in that moment, I realized how deeply rare such acknowledgement could be, especially after decades of living in roles defined by duty, expectation, and routine. "You've changed this shed into something extraordinary," he said, his voice quiet but sincere. "It's more than just a space for tools or flowers. It's a reflection of you. And that's remarkable." I felt a warmth spread through me, a blend of gratitude and quiet pride. "I suppose it has become a reflection," I admitted, "of what I've needed for myself, perhaps more than I realized." He nodded, and for a moment, neither of us moved. The air was still, the soft hum of the garden outside filtering through the window. There was no rush, no need for declarations or dramatic gestures. What existed between us was something steady, respectful, and profoundly grounding. "I hope you know," he said finally, "that you don't have to hide these parts of yourself. You deserve to be seen, acknowledged, and appreciated, not just for what you do, but for who you are." I swallowed, feeling a lump in my throat. "Thank you, Jackson. I think I've spent so long believing that my worth was measured by what I do for others, that I forgot to recognize it in myself." He smiled, the kind of smile that carries understanding and patience. "Then let this be a reminder that it's never too late to see yourself, to embrace who you are fully, and to allow someone else to appreciate it as well." The sun dipped lower, casting long, warm shadows across the shed floor. I realized that life had given me a gift in those moments, not one of grand passion or upheaval, but of subtle transformation. It was the kind of shift that changes the way you see yourself, the way you navigate relationships, and the way you understand connection. As Jackson finally prepared to leave, he paused at the door. "I'll let you get back to your day," he said, "but know that I'm always here, to notice, to listen, and to respect the person you are." I felt a deep sense of gratitude as the door closed behind him. The shed felt quieter, yet it wasn't empty. It was full of reflection, growth, and a gentle understanding that connection could be profoundly meaningful without being overwhelming or complicated. I sat on the edge of the workbench, the golden light streaming through the window, and thought about the past weeks, the moments of awareness, the shared silences, the quiet affirmations of respect and acknowledgement. I realized that life could surprise you in the gentlest of ways, and that sometimes the most profound experiences are not those of dramatic intensity, but of steady, sincere presence. As I left the shed and walked back into the garden, I felt lighter, more grounded, and more attuned to the richness of my own existence. I understood now that connection, appreciation, and personal discovery were timeless, and that allowing oneself to be truly seen could be a transformative experience at any stage of life. And as I paused among the roses, their petals glowing softly in the fading sunlight, I smiled. I had discovered something extraordinary, not in a moment of drama or romance, but in the gentle unfolding of understanding, trust, and mutual respect. It was a quiet, lasting revelation, and I knew it would stay with me long after the sun had set. The garden, the shed, the roses, and the presence of a friend who truly saw me. They had all become part of a journey that reminded me life doesn't stop offering opportunities for growth, connection, and discovery, no matter your age. And sometimes the most unexpected encounters can illuminate the deepest parts of your heart, leaving you forever changed in the best possible way.